everyone. I'm Dr. Margaret Cochran, and I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about the relationship between attitude and gratitude, because you know, attitude is everything. Seriously, our whole life experience is determined by our outlook, and life is just chock full of interesting experiences for us to react to. Or said another way, shit happens. Rather more often than most of us would like, actually. However, in the face of that, it's also important to remember that manure makes things grow. You heard me right. I said manure makes things grow. And how we react to what happens in life determines the quality of our life. It's easy to let ourselves get too caught up in minutia and lose our perspective, such that eventually we come to believe that life controls us instead of the other way around. Yeah, not good. And also, not true. Whatever we go through, we have the power to determine if it will define us or inspire us. Now, at first blush, it seems a simple enough choice. Why would anyone want to see things in a negative light? Why would anyone not choose to be inspired by life's challenges rather than being defined by them? Funny thing, though, lots of people choose to do exactly that. And they do it because important people in their lives have encouraged them to. Using positivity strangling statements like, don't get your hopes up, it probably won't turn out the way you want. Dreaming is nice, but you need to be realistic. Now, some of these people who say these things are full of good intentions. You know, the stuff that the road to hell is paved with. And they encourage you to focus on disappointment and the inevitability of suffering in a very misguided attempt to spare you pain. Others are not so well-intentioned, and they want to keep you disappointed and discouraged because when you're sad and afraid all the time, you lose your ability to think critically and ask questions, so you become easy to control. Nice, eh? People ask me all the time, how can they be happy? They know how to be stressed, they know how to be sad, they know how to be angry, but happiness, that seems to elude them. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, they've been trained to think it's beyond them. The good news? It's actually pretty easy to turn that around. You can literally reprogram your brain with one simple practice. You can change your attitude with the practice of gratitude. Every morning or evening, or even twice a day if you really want to go for it, you simply take a few moments to focus on everything that's good in your life. You can begin with anything. For example, I'm so happy and grateful that it's a sunny day. I'm so happy and grateful that I have a wonderful cat. I'm so happy and grateful that I'm healthy and strong, and so forth. This is also great to do as a family, by the way. You know, around the dinner table, just have everyone say something that they're grateful for and then go around and do it again. And the more you practice this, the longer your list will become. And the longer your list becomes, the happier you are. And the happier you are, the longer your list becomes. And, well, you get the idea. Now, you might think, that sounds too easy. But it really is. It's just that easy. You just begin with a daily gratitude practice, and you will find that very quickly your life will start to change. Things that used to really bother you just won't seem very important anymore. And you'll begin to notice that you attract and are attracted to other positive people and opportunities. Extraordinary, yes? That's why I call it wisdom, love, and magic. However, there is something I want to call to your attention with regard to this or any other change process. The human brain is very trainable, you see, and once you've trained it, it responds as you've instructed it to. It functions rather like a thermostat. So let's say your happiness level is set at 60. And so you decide, enough with 60. 60 doesn't cut it anymore. I want to be happier. I want to run at, say, 80. So you start a gratitude practice, and after a while you begin to notice a change in yourself. You start to feel better. And you're not operating at 60 anymore. You now begin to function at 80 more times than not. And here's the thing. When you begin any change process, your brain is going to push back. It will come up with reasons to abandon your new behavior, even though the new behavior you've started is good for you. It represents something new and different, and your brain will interpret that as a bad thing. It's not the normal that you've been used to, and that's what our brain will rebel against. Your thermostat brain goes into action because you are dangerously out of range. You're supposed to be at 60 and no higher. It doesn't matter that 60 was painful. That's what it was used to. That's what it thinks you want to return to. and I call that predictable pain. In predictable pain, you know who to be, how to act, and how things will end. And even though the ending is not a happy one, it's a sure thing. Unlike the seeming unpredictability of happiness. And that's what your mental thermostat wants, predictability. So your brain is going to push back, and what will the pushback look like? It will look like negative thoughts. Lots and lots and lots of thermostat maintaining negative thoughts. Thoughts that will tell you life is not so good after all, and things aren't going to go your way. Thoughts that say you can't have it all, and that happiness is an anomaly and not something you can count on. The thoughts that say happiness is outside yourself and dependent on other people or events or things that you can't control, rather than something you are in charge of. So what do you do about these thoughts? Well, you have to politely escort them back out of your head with the phrases, I'm better than that, or thank you, no, or simply just stop. And if you keep at it, you will reset your brain thermostat, and happiness and a positive outlook will become your new normal. And then, well, anything's possible. And on that note, let me tell you a little story. 3 men were sent by their employer to a meditation conference in a very small village in a remote area. 1 man was of the Hindu faith, 1 man was of the Jewish faith, and the 3rd man, he was just plain nasty. He worshipped at the altar of misery and meanness. The village they were sent to was so remote, in fact, that there was no cell service. The roads were not paved, and access from the big city was achieved via 1 small propeller-driven plane that flew in and out using a tiny, dirty airstrip that the locals euphemistically called an airport. Travel from the airport to the village was achieved via 1 cab that might generously be referred to as a vintage vehicle. So under these circumstances, our intrepid seekers landed at what served as an airport and loaded their bags into what served as a cab. The drive to the meditation center was long, bumpy, and dusty. And when the journey was over, the 3 men found that they would be rooming together during their stay. The meditation retreat was a week-long affair, and while the Hindu man and the Jewish man were learning a lot and enjoying the peace and solitude, the nasty, grouchy trousers man was complaining about everything. He complained about the food. It was too healthy. He complained about the bed. It was too soft. He complained about the weather. It was too nice. And he complained about his roommates, whom he considered fools and imbeciles for being so happy and pleasant in their demeanor. He was very unhappy because he thought meditation was a stupid waste of time, and finally he howled long and loud about his boss being a wretched excuse for a human being, as he had forced him into wasting 7 days of his life in this ridiculous place with these ridiculous people doing these ridiculous things. In due course, the conference was over, and the 3 men packed their belongings and bundled them into the waiting cab, and off they set to the airport. When they just got into the outskirts of the village, the cab broke down. The driver got out and opened the hood, and after some careful study, she announced that she would walk to the nearest farmhouse and try to get a ride into town and fetch the 1 mechanic who lived and worked there. "You mean," said the nasty man, "that I'm going to be kept waiting in this God-forsaken wilderness because of your gross negligence? I'm going to sue." Cab driver just shook her head and walked away without reply. An hour or so went by, and the cab driver returned with the local mechanic. "It's about time," the nasty man said. The mechanic opened the hood of the cab and studied the contents thoughtfully. "Well," she said, "I can certainly fix it. However, as this is a vintage vehicle, I will need to order special parts from the big city. If I hurry back to town and order right now, they will likely be here by tomorrow afternoon. So I suggest you gentlemen find yourself a place to spend the night." Now the cab driver, who was sympathetic to their plight, said that she knew of a sweet farmer down the road a few miles who had a spare room in a warm barn, and she felt that the farmer would probably let them stay there. The Hindu man and the Jewish man thanked the 2 women for their trouble and asked for exact directions to the kindly farmer's house. But the nasty man exploded. He was apoplectic with rage. "I'm important," he screamed, "and you idiots are wasting my time. I can't believe that I'm stuck here because of this rattletrap piece of junk that you call a cab. You need to find me another way to get to the airport right this minute." The cab driver and the mechanic both shook their heads this time and went off in the direction of the village. The Hindu man and the Jewish man took their bags and started walking in the opposite direction toward the farmer's house. Reluctantly, the nasty man petulantly followed along behind. When they arrived, the farmer was most gracious and offered them her spare room with 2 twin beds and the barn. She left it up to them to decide who would sleep where. The nasty man said, "I'm not sleeping in any disgusting, filthy barn. I'm taking one of the beds, and you 2 morons can sort out the rest." So the Hindu man and the Jewish man flipped a coin, and the Hindu man went to sleep in the barn while the Jewish man slept in one of the beds. Just as everyone had settled down for the night and the lights had been extinguished, there came a knock at the door. The Jewish man got up and opened the door, and there stood the Hindu man. "I'm so sorry to awaken you, but you see, there's a cow in the barn. A very lovely cow indeed, but they're sacred in my religion, and it does not feel right for me to sleep there." "I understand," said the Jewish man. "I'll trade places with you." "Will you idiots shut up?" said the nasty man. "I'm trying to get some sleep in this horrible place, in this lumpy bed, in this ridiculous excuse for civilization." The Jewish man went out to the barn, and everyone settled down again, and the lights were once again extinguished. Shortly thereafter, there was yet another knock at the door. The Hindu man got up and answered it. It was the Jewish man. "I'm so sorry to disturb you, but you see, there's a pig in the barn. A very lovely pig indeed, but because of my religious beliefs, it would not be right for me to share a sleeping space with it." At that, the nasty man jumped out of bed. "You 2 are the poorest excuses for humanity I've ever met. I will go to sleep in the barn just to be rid of your disgusting, simpering selves." The nasty man stomped off to the barn, and the Hindu man and the Jewish man got in their respective beds and settled down to sleep. And after a short while, there was another knock at the door. The Hindu man and the Jewish man were both so puzzled and intrigued that they got out of bed to answer it together. And when they opened the door, guess who they found standing there? It was the cow and the pig. As I said, attitude is everything. We've come to the end of our time. Be safe and well. And remember, you can set your mental thermostat to be at whatever level you choose. And I hope you choose a happy, joyous setting. Because even in the most difficult of times, there is happiness to be had. I promise. Shrink's honor. And until we meet again, I'm Dr. Margaret Cochran, wishing you heaps and heaps of wisdom, love, and magic.